ready to begin. All right, so good afternoon to everyone. This is Francisco at VCS, and this afternoon's class is titled Schedule Exceptions and Job Assignment Setup. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to learn how to create day off and reason codes that will be applied to the schedule. We're going to learn how to create job assignments, of which will also be posted on the schedule. And we're going to continue building through the desktop application, which is what I currently have loaded up. And just to give you a little context for what we're going to be working on today, I'd like to just show you my patrol schedule here, which is found on the top left portion of my dashboard view. Now, for those of you who just started your schedule build and you're doing this in order of the catalog numbers, you may have not built your dashboards yet. That's perfectly fine. But you're just going to take a look at mine, and you're going to notice that on my shift here for September 7th, over on the left, I have job assignments, which are various zones that people are going to be assigned to during the course of their patrol day shift. Now, if you're not using this for a patrol-related schedule, you can still use this for basically any job assignment. So anything that someone might be doing during the course of their regular workday would be considered a job assignment. And along with my zones here, you'll also see a training job assignment next to someone's name here on my schedule. So we're going to take a look at how to create those job assignments, which you'll be able to apply on daily, weekly, or a monthly basis. And those job assignments can also be used to determine any pay differences or differentials. So if you have someone who's performing a particular job that affects their pay, then you may be interested in creating those job assignments for your scheduling system. We're also going to learn how to create day off and overtime reason codes. Here's an example of someone who's on a vacation day. That's me. And time off is going to be posted on the schedule using various colors indicating which step in the approval process it's in. So here we have a vacation day that's displayed in green. That means it's been approved. I have someone who has requested a comp day on that same shift. That's displayed in blue, indicating that it has not been approved just yet. And here, Jeff Morgan on my day shift has worked overtime, so we have a code indicating the type of overtime that he's worked. In this case, he might be catching up on some reports. And over to the right, you have the hours of that overtime. Okay, so let's start with our job assignments. And we're going to go to our administration drop-down menu. We're going to select the Job Assignment Center. And we're going to select Setup Jobs. I'm just going to resize this screen here so you can see the full list of jobs that I currently have in my system and ones that you may choose to mirror for your own. So here on the list I have examples of zones. For you, this might be a patrol district or work area. But up top, I have several other job assignments that are used to determine types of work statuses, and those would often include things that might affect pay. So I have an example here of an FTO job assignment, and I can assign that to someone for maybe their entire shift or for certain hours of their shift. And for some of you, that might affect pay. If I was one of those people who was working as a field training officer, I might get added pay, either for each hour or maybe for the entire shift. Here's one for officer in charge. So if you have a situation where a supervisor may not be working on the schedule and you're going to have a senior person covering that position, you can place them on an OIC job assignment, or you can choose your very own if you refer to it as something else other than OIC. That's perfectly fine. Now, if that particular job assignment affects pay, if I'm working as an OIC on an 8-hour shift, you're going to be able to extract that information and use that not only for reporting purposes, but for payroll purposes as well. So let's create a brand new job assignment. Let's click on the New button. Under the code, we're going to enter a 5-character abbreviation for that job assignment, and it can be less than 5 characters. But in my case, I'm going to stick with my zones, and I'm just going to create a zone 7. So again, just making sure that the character length stays at 5 or less. Then move on to the description. And you should have plenty of character length here to write a full description of that job. Now, those are the only 2 required fields for any jobs that you create, but there's a few others that you might choose to use. For instance, under short number, if there are certain job assignments that you're just going to use more frequently than others, you can choose a short number so that those jobs appear at the very top of any of the assignment screens that supervisors or administrators will be using. So just remaining consistent with what I've done with some of my zones, I may want those numbered in a specific way. Once I'm done, I can click on the Save button, and that job assignment will be added to the left with all of the others. Now, going back to field training officer and officer in charge job assignments, you'll notice for those, I have copied my code and added it to the premium code field. You're going to do this for any job assignments that will affect pay. This allows us at a later time to extract this data. In other words, someone who's just working a standard job assignment during the course of their work schedule will not have their pay affected in any way. Those that have a premium code will. And so we'll be able to extract any job assignments that have a premium code, and we'll be able to apply various rules to make sure that anyone assigned to that job is paid the correct rate. Now, for those that might be using job assignments in more of a city-type, municipality-type environment, you may be using this for your DPW groups. So if you have someone who's operating a forklift one day, and during those hours we have to pay them differently because of that particular function, create a job assignment for it. Now we're going to look at a couple of other examples of job assignments which you may choose to include in your build. And here I have one called light duty, and I'm using LD as the code. And you'll notice for my light duty on the bottom right, I have a checkbox marked omit job from validation. You're going to notice I also have that same checkbox marked for my training job assignment. So this is used in situations where someone is scheduled to work on a particular day, but they may not count towards your minimum staffing requirements. Now, most of you have not learned how to build those minimum staffing requirements into your schedule just yet. That's handled under the 6th online build class, the second to last build class. The point is and I'll use my day shift here to illustrate my point. If I have certain minimum staffing requirements on that shift, but I have someone who is out training, they probably should not count towards whatever those requirements were. And light duty is another example where that might be the case. Now, for those of you that where things like light duty would apply, you may end up moving that person to an administrative schedule where you probably don't have minimum staffing requirements. But for those where you're going to have someone on light duty where they're still following their squad or platoon, you may want to mark them with a light duty job assignment. So again, we're not counting them towards our minimums. And for that, again, just make sure that you mark omit job from validation for those types of assignments. Now you're going to leave the other fields blank. Payroll codes do not have to be applied at this time, not until we have worked with you on a more one-on-one basis, setting up any payroll exports that you might be utilizing. So at this point, once you have created your jobs, you can close out of this screen. Now, when you enter the screen to start adding in your job assignments, you may notice that there are some jobs already in here. That's just template data. You can choose to use it, or you can delete the ones that you don't want. Just highlight them and click on the delete button up top and click yes to confirm. Okay, so as I mentioned before, job assignments can be used to affect pay, but in any case, even if it's not going to affect pay, you can still run reports. So here is an example of a very simple job assignment report showing the name of the individual, the job that they were on, the date, and the total amount of hours. So reports similar to this can be run for any group of employees within your agency for pretty much any period of time you wish. And if there are just specific jobs you're interested on reporting, you can certainly choose them from the list of assignment codes. Okay, I'd like to just take the opportunity here to open up the microphones and I'd like to take any questions anyone may have on creating job assignments. And so anyone who has dialed in or has a microphone attached, I will be able to hear you. However, if you are more comfortable submitting any questions via the chat feature, go right ahead and do that.
I think we're good here.
Okay. All right, we'll have the opportunity to take more questions on this towards the end of our session today. Okay, so let's close out of our setup job screen. And we're going to move on to our day off codes. To do that, we're going to select Schedule Exception Center, again from our Administration drop-down menu. And we're going to select Setup Day Off Codes. So day off codes or day off time off in general can be applied to the schedule by an administrator or a supervisor in cases where someone calls out sick or there's some type of administrative leave that needs to be applied. But your basic users, your employees, will also be able to request time off through our system. And when they do this, they're going to have a list similar to what I have available here on the left side of the screen. So the more day off codes you have, the more you're going to be able to track. Each day off type will have to be approved. Every day off code can be reported on in a number of different ways. And day off activity can also be exported out to a payroll system if necessary. So in creating your day off codes, there are just 3 required fields: a code, a description, and a bank. So using my vacation day as an example, at the very top, I have a code of 5 characters or less, and it is that code that will be used as the label for my schedules. So taking a look at the example I gave you before on the day shift, my vacation day here from 07 to 1900 is using that code. The description, however, can be written out. The description is what will appear on the actual list when someone is requesting time off. So they're not going to see VAC from a list. They're going to see whatever you chose as the description. Now, although this is not a required field, units is important. And here you're telling our system whether that time off is measured in units of hours or days. Now, eventually, you will have to upload balances for every employee for each bank that you create. So if you do have certain types of time off that can be used in hourly increments and some that are just used in daily increments, if possible, I would consider switching them all over to hours. That's just going to keep things a bit more consistent for you and easier for you to handle later on when you have to upload balances. Otherwise, you're going to have to remember that whenever you're uploading vacation time, it has to go in hours, and if personal time is done in daily units, you're going to have to enter those in daily increments. But of course, it is your choice. Each day off has its own setting for that. For my example, I'm leaving it set to hours. Under abbreviation, you're going to choose a 1-character abbreviation for that day off. And that's just going to be used under certain schedule views. And I'd like to just give you a brief example of how that's going to appear. Okay, so let's bring this new window over. And what you guys are looking at right now is a monthly schedule, one of the monthly schedule views that's available through our web portal. Now, your web portal is where most of your basic users and supervisors will be operating through. You'll notice here I have some sick time, some vacation time, and some calm time posted on the schedule. So due to the limitations in space that we have, just under certain schedule views, such as this one, we need those abbreviations. Just about everywhere else, though, you will see the actual code. But for this one, again, because of the amount of space that we have, we're just going to show you abbreviations that summarize the time off activity. Let's move that back to where it was. And so again, that's your abbreviation. Next, track as day off will be marked for any type of time off that has a bank associated with it. Vacation, sick, personal time are great examples where you're going to want to make sure you have track as day off marked. Now, the bank that's being applied will be created for you automatically once you have begun entering the day off reason. So the system assumes that if you're creating a day off code called VAC, there should probably be a bank associated with that day off reason. And that's the bank where you will initially upload time into, and then eventually the system will automatically allot time based on any work rules that you might create. Now, over to the right, there's a series of checkboxes, but the only one that you need to worry about during your schedule build is the one that I have marked. Allowed to select from web simply means that basic users or supervisors will be able to log on to the web portal and request that type of time off. Now, there might be certain types of reasons that you may not want basic users or even supervisors to request. Some of those might be for administrative leave. If someone is suspended, something like that would be applied at the administrative level. So, of course, no one is going to request to be suspended. And that's really the only checkbox that you're going to have to worry about at this time. Now, there might be additional checkboxes used. That will be determined later on when we're processing payroll, or if we need to build certain work rules to determine eligibility for overtime. So for now, just make sure that you have allowed to select from web so people can choose those day off reasons from the web portal. Now, at the very bottom, you're going to have color codes, and we saw examples of this. There was some approved time off and some time off that was still requested or pending approval. And this is where you're going to set those colors. For my system, I chose green for approved, yellow for approved with stipulation, which is like a temporary approval or a step approval. My requests will appear in blue and denied entries will appear in red. Now you can choose from any other color palette that you would like. Click on the Approved button to bring up the palette, choose your color, and click on the OK button. Now VCS recommends that you use a color palette similar to what I have here, only because when we look at specific schedule views, and let's take a look at my monthly calendar here from my web portal. Whenever someone looks at their monthly schedule and views their time off and overtime activity, the color codes on the bottom of the monthly schedule views are hard-coded. That's why we recommend trying to fit into this palette. Otherwise, what will happen is a request will appear in blue on this screen, but when that same employee goes to another schedule view, the request might appear in a different color, and it just might cause some confusion, at least initially. So if at all possible, I would definitely recommend choosing from a similar palette. Now let's enter a brand new item. I'm going to click on the New button up top. And here I'm going to create a day off code for FMLA. That's pretty common. So I'll use FMLA, but I'm also going to add an S. So this day off code will track FMLA tied to the sick bank. So let's type in FMLA sick. That will be measured in hours. For the abbreviation, for purposes of scheduling, we can just call this S for sick or F for FMLA. I'll use S for sick. I'm going to track that, but instead of using the bank that the system created for me, I'm going to click on the bank button and choose sick. This way, if I need to use this day off reason, it's still allowing me to track it separately from a normal sick day, but it's still drawing from the sick bank, which is probably what I want. Over to the right, again, choose if you want to make that day off reason available to be requested. And then at the bottom, use the options to select colors for approved, approved with stipulation, requests, or denied entries. And you can even use the selections here to change the font color if it's just a little easier to read. When you're done, click on the Save button up top, and that new day off code is added to your list. So you may end up creating multiple FMLA day off codes, one to draw from sick time, one to draw from vacation, one to draw from personal, whatever it might be. I'm going to add another one here, one more example before I take questions. And I'm going to use this one here. This is my funeral leave. We see this one quite a bit in the mostly in police departments. Now, the difference here is I'm not going to track as day off, because that's the type of time off that people are entitled to, but they're not necessarily receiving a bank of time to draw from. So by leaving this unmarked, that means there is no active bank for funeral leave. We basically use it as we need it. Now, this does not mean we're not going to be able to track time off activity for funeral leave. That's something entirely different. This just means you're turning on the bank. Whether there is a bank or there isn't, you will always be able to run reports on time off activity for your entire department. I will mark allowed to select from web, and now I'm going to use my color assignments. Now, because I already saved one entry, it keeps track of the colors that I used. So those will be highlighted for me. I just have to click on the OK button and just have to do the same thing for each one. And again, it remembers what color it was. But I may need to set the font to white, just again for better contrast here. Once we're done, click on the Save button. Now again, you might have day off reasons that have already been populated into your system, in which case just review the ones that you have. If there's some that you just don't need, highlight them and click on the Delete button. You'll be asked to confirm, just click on the Yes button, and that day off code will be removed. Now, once a day off is applied to the schedule, the reason code cannot be deleted. Okay, so you'll only be able to delete items that have not been used yet. Okay, so that's it for entering our day off codes. I'm going to open up the microphones again, and I'd like to take any questions that any of you may have on entering day off reason codes.
Pretty cut and dry.
You said that once a code is applied to the schedule, it can't be deleted. Does that mean once an employee uses it, or once we assign that to someone's schedule?
Either way, whether it's, if someone requests a vacation day or you post a vacation day on the schedule on their behalf, once it gets posted on there, you cannot delete the day off code from this master list. And you wouldn't want that, right? Now, if a mistake was made, you can change the day off code on the entry itself, and then after doing that, you would be able to delete the code.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions on entering day off codes?
Cut and dry.
Okay. Wonderful. So let's move on. And we're going to stay within the Schedule Exception Center. And we're going to talk a little bit about overtime codes and the pay types associated with them. So let's take a brief look at setting up our overtime codes. So whether we're talking about filling a staffing shortage, working late at the end of our shift, you're going to want to make sure that you have enough overtime reasons here. And in fact, most of you are probably still doing this on paper. You might have another system, but most of you are probably doing this on paper. So you want to at least make sure that the same overtime reasons that are on your paper slips are going to make it in this system. But you may also choose to expand on that, because the more overtime reasons you have, the more you're going to be able to report on later on. You're going to be able to see not only how many hours of overtime someone worked, but also how much you've paid out. Maybe you want to know how much late call overtime you spent on a particular shift or a particular squad. That can be done through our system. Now, for every overtime reason, we're going to have a code. And when you're entering the codes, just make sure that you're not choosing something that you already used for a day off reason. You're going to enter a description. Under units, I would imagine in most cases you're going to set this to hours. We're going to skip ahead to this section here called mandatory hours callback. And what this means is when this overtime reason is used, it has a minimum payout, in this case of 2 hours. And for those of you that are going to be using this for court overtime, that's probably a good example of where you might have to apply a minimum like that. In other words, if I have court on a particular day, maybe it's my regular day off, maybe I was there for a half hour, but if I'm paid a 3-hour minimum for that, I need to make sure that this overtime reason code is set up properly so that those requesting overtime payment only have to put in the actual hours they work. The system will round it up to the minimum. Of course, if the person ends up working beyond that, the system will make sure that it pays that person properly. Now, at the very bottom, you're going to have a list of pay types. Now, in our system, overtime is just used to refer to anything that is worked outside of the regular schedule. It does not determine the actual rate. When someone requests overtime payment, if they work late at the end of their shift, they're going to tell us the date that they worked, the reason why they worked overtime, and they're going to choose their preferred pay type. Now, before we enter an overtime example, let's just minimize this screen for a moment, and let's take a look at the screen called Setup Pay Types. So we just saw these two pay types in the overtime code screen. So this is your master list of available pay types. Any one of these can be used as an available pay type for any overtime reason. We're going to put in an example. Let's click on the new button. Let's enter a time and a half cash pay type. So I'm keeping my code at 5 characters or less. I'm going to enter a description of the pay type, what method it gets paid out in this case cash, and under the pay factor, we're going to enter 1.5. Let's click on the Save button up top, and we're going to create a brand new one for 1.5 comp. And I'll use 1.5T for time. Under method, we're going to switch that over to time. We're going to apply the pay factor of 1.5, and now we're going to tie it to one of our day off banks. So if someone works 2 hours of overtime at the end of their day, and they're going to be paid time and a half for those 2 hours, once the supervisor approves that overtime entry, 3 hours for 2 hours worked will go directly into the comp bank for that individual to use. Let's click on the Save button. Now I have a straight cash, straight comp, time and a half cash, and time and a half comp. Now, if your organization pays things in double time, then you'll want to make sure that those pay options are listed here as well. So let's close out of the screen. Let's go back to our day off codes. I was set up overtime codes. And I'm going to create a brand new overtime reason. I'll use LC for late call. I'll write that out under the description. Units will be set to hours. For my abbreviation, I can use L for late call or C for call. Under mandatory hours callback, I'm going to leave that set to 0, so there's no minimum pay for that. And at the bottom, I can choose to lock certain pay types to that overtime reason. In my organization, if the type of people who are going to be using this can only take the cash, I can mark the cash pay type, and then that is the only available pay option that will be provided to the user. So let's think of another example where that might be used. Grant overtime. You might have an overtime reason for that. Well, those that are working that may not be able to take comp time for that. Cash might be the only choice. Let's click on the Save button, and now late call has been added to our list. Okay. Let's take a look at that web portal once again. And let's say that I worked late at the end of my shift, maybe the previous day if I was on the schedule. Okay, so I'll use September 3rd as an example. So if I work late at the end of my shift, I am going to click on the employee drop-down menu. I am going to select Request Overtime Payment. I'm going to select the date that the overtime was worked on, the shift that I was on, the reason for the overtime, and there you see the list that we just added to. Since I selected late call, you'll notice the only available pay type is 1.5 cash. Next, I'm just going to key in the additional hours that I worked. And so once one of your users submits this entry, the supervisor will approve it. If the individual requested the comp time, that comp time will be placed into the bank. Now, for some of you, you may have a rule that states someone must work a certain amount of hours before they can earn time and a half. That's okay. Just because I chose time and a half cash doesn't mean I'm guaranteed to get that. I may have to work a certain amount of hours, and if I do not, these hours may end up getting paid at straight time. Okay? And those are all parts of payroll-related rules that you'll have the opportunity to build into the system. But hopefully this provides a little context for how the overtime reasons are going to be used. Okay, so let's open up the mics, and are there any questions on entering overtime reason codes or the pay types associated with them?
Well, now.
The only question I have is what order should I start entering? Should I go to the pay types at the first and then build the overtime rules?
So I would definitely recommend creating the day off codes first, because you're probably going to have a comp day off code that you're going to have to link to when you're creating your comp payment types. So I would do the day off codes first. Then I would take a look at the pay types first. Just make sure that you have, your straight cash and comp, time and a half cash and comp. If you guys do double time, that's fine. Make sure that those are in order. Then I would look at the overtime codes last, because then now you have the full list of pay types. You'll be able to determine if certain overtime reasons should be locked to specific pay types, similar to what I did with the late call example.
Okay.
Now, it's not the end of the world. If you end up creating your overtime codes and then later on you find out that you're missing pay types, go ahead, add the pay types, and just go back into this screen. And again, if you have to set certain overtime reasons to a particular pay type, you can always do that. It doesn't matter what order it is.
Okay. Got it.
Instead of that, kind of like, whatever's on the PAF needs to go in all this, because that's what guys are going to check off. Already married, very well already done it.
We could kind of adapt it a little too, because instead of like grants, the U.S. you can add, and as long as they're not top.
Okay. Any other questions at this time about entering overtime codes or payment types?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, folks. So we have one last thing on our agenda to cover before we call it a day. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we call schedule details. A schedule detail is very similar to a job. It's something that you can assign to an employee during the course of their work schedule on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, or even a permanent basis. The difference is that a schedule detail is a customized category that you create. A schedule detail can be vehicle assignments. It could be AEDs. It can be a particular skill set that an individual has. It can even be a piece of equipment like a rifle or a taser. These schedule details can also be posted on your schedules. Jobs will be displayed on the left, and any additional schedule detail category will be displayed to the right, around where you're seeing the day off codes. So let's take a look at some examples of schedule details. Using my Supervisor Zone, there's a screen here that many of your supervisors might like for those that are assigning these types of things on a day-to-day basis. The way the screen works is we select the shift that we want to work with, and I'll select my night shift here. Over on the left, we'll see a list of people who are scheduled to work. Over on the right, you're going to see the job assignments that we created in our very first step today. But using the drop-down menu, I can select other schedule details, such as vehicles, tasers, rifles, you name it. Let's go back to my vehicles. Let's just assign people to few of the cars just by clicking and dragging, and let's close that out. Now, as soon as the screen has an opportunity to refresh, those assignments now appear over to the right of the individual's name. Other than where the schedule details are located, they operate just like any other job assignment in the way that they're assigned to the schedule and also how they're reported. So if you needed to know who was in a particular vehicle or who had a piece of equipment with them during their shift on a particular day, that's all information you're going to be able to extract from our system. So to create schedule details, let's click on the Administration drop-down menu. We're going to select List Center, and then we'll choose Set Up Schedule Details Lists. On the top left, you may already have certain categories created for you, like car, radio, AED, and work status. So if it's simply a matter of adding an item to an existing category, just enter the item. I would recommend using the same description label for the additional information column. And as you're typing in new items under that category, a brand new blank item will be listed for you below it. When you're done, click on the Save button up top, and you'll receive confirmation that those entries have been added to whatever schedule detail category you were working with. And I'll just wipe this one out so I can show you how to build it from scratch. So in the event that you have another category you want to create, and again, this could be for equipment, it could be for a skill set that someone possesses that you may want to post on the schedule, just click on the New button, enter the name of the category, click on the OK button, and start entering the items. Once you're done, click on the Save button and click OK to confirm. Now, for most of you, job assignments will be sufficient and will track exactly what you need. But again, if you want to track vehicle assignments or there's additional things that you want to make sure are posted on the schedule, well, you can certainly do so. Now, are there any questions on creating schedule details or assigning schedule details. And I'll open up the microphones, and I'll leave those open, not only just for this screen, but whether it's job assignments, time off, overtime, or pay types. Are there any questions about anything that we have covered this afternoon?
No, it's very interesting.
Very good.
Okay, so while I'm waiting, if there are any now, that when you signed up for this class, you should have received a PDF document with screenshots and instructions for setting up the items we just discussed. Some of you may have even printed that document out and followed along. That's perfectly fine. Now, after the class ends today, soon after, you're going to receive an email confirmation. It's sort of just a thank you for registering for the class. In that email, you're going to receive that document or access to that document once again, and you'll also receive a link to access the video for this afternoon. Okay. Now, in addition to that, for those of you that are just getting started with us, I just wanted to very briefly. There we go. I wanted to bring up the training catalog that you used to sign up for this and some of the other classes. So this should look familiar to most of you. You went through and scheduled your online classes. Within this catalog, we have what's called training helpouts. These are one-on-one 45-minute sessions, so that in the event you have any difficulty building your schedule, completing any of the steps we cover, sign up for one of those classes. You'll have us for 45 minutes, and we'll be able to address whatever issues you're having. Because we understand that these online builds, we're discussing things at somewhat a high level, right? We're not talking about how you do things specifically within your agencies. So those help out sessions are a great opportunity for you to discuss those with us. Okay. And those help outs are available, every week we have offerings for those. So please sign up for as many as you feel you need.
Is there a class 3? It looks like I signed up for 1, 2, 4, and 5 so far, but I wasn't able to find a class 3 on the catalog.
Yeah, we have one on the 12th, 13th, and the 26th.
I must have missed the listing on where I signed up. So those are the only dates you have.
That is correct. Now, every now and then we add additional classes. If we have, if we have a couple of extra people working on a particular week we didn't expect, we may throw up a few more classes onto the catalog.
I'll take it from this side.
But at this time, these are the only 3 that are available for this month. Now, what you may choose to do is if you go to, I'm just going to bring up our YouTube channel. And I'll have that up momentarily.
Come in.
Okay, so this right here is VCS's YouTube channel. And so all of our videos are archived and posted on here. And what I would suggest is go to our playlists, and what you're looking for are the community learning classes. This is where you guys are at now, basic setup. And so you can click on this playlist and you can choose to see any one of the videos in there. Okay? So if, for instance, it's going to be a week or so before Class 3 starts up, you can always see one of the prior videos because we're really discussing the same topics. So it allows you to get a jump on it, and you might feel that that's all you need. You might not have to sign up for the live class if you don't want to.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to make these fit in because I also do the payroll here, so I'm trying to make these dates fit in with the off weeks of when I'm not doing payroll. Unfortunately,
I understand completely. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, that you can use the videos and you can use the help out session. So if you watch the video and you think you have a good idea, but you just want to float some things, by us, sign up for the help out sessions. And again, you may be able to spare yourself from having to sign up for the live class.
No.
Right. Now, do the help sessions come with PDFs also? Because I found that these handouts are really handy to keep with you after you go try to apply what you learn.
I'm sorry, there was a little, I wasn't able to hear you clearly.
When you do the help out sessions, can you get PDFs from that session as well?
Not PDF sessions, but we can record them for you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, because the help outs are really, you sort of come with a list of things that you might need assistance with. So we just record those, and then after the help out, you'll receive a recording of that session.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Are there any other questions before we close out this afternoon's class?
I have one, and it might be that I'm jumping ahead, but all of these basic building codes really needs to be done before you start entering employees. Is that correct?
I would enter, we actually cover entering employees in the first basic setup class. That's where we teach you how to do it. Now, in Class 2, of course, we dealt with day off and overtime reasons. So in Class 3, we talk about building schedules. We build shifts, we build schedule rotations or patterns. We don't actually have to have all of the employees in the system until class number 5. Because class number 5 is where you actually start assigning your employees to the schedules that you built in one of the previous sessions, right? So we teach you in class 1 how to add the employees, but you have a window of time there to get them all in. But by class number 5, you definitely want to make sure that all of your employees are in there, because that's the step where you're going to start assigning them to what types of schedules they're going to be working.
Okay. So the last question I have is, so then the PAS system, which is strictly just for the police, and the VCS, if they're entered in the PAS system, do I need to also enter my police in the VCS system?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I think the question I have is, we have a police department and they're on the POS scheduling part of this. Do I need to re-enter them on my side as the administrator of the VCS system?
So now, do you have more than one department that's using this system?
Yes. We have the police department and we have the administrative officers of the municipality using the same...
I understand. I understand. So the police department has their own system, and then the municipality has their own.
Yes.
Okay. So those are two separate databases, right? The police department has its own system with its own employees and its own schedules. The municipality has its own employees as well. So you don't have to enter every employee in both systems, right? You're gonna add them to whichever database those people are gonna work off of.
Okay. So then the police
Okay.
department is just going to print out the reports because they all get paid by me. So it's all one group of people, but they're divided by the systems that we're running.
Right. So what would end up happening in your case is, if you're processing payroll for the police department, you just need access to both systems.
Okay.
So that you can run, payroll on one side and then run payroll, on the other. But yeah, I would just make sure that you have access to both of the databases, but the employees don't have to be in both.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Any other questions before we close out for this afternoon?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it very much. Please sign up for those help outs. And I look forward to our next class together. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye now.